It's Blake here at Wrestling Reaction with our WrestleMania 40 Kickoff Event review. It's not very often you review press conferences, but this, of course, was not your traditional press conference. It was instead one that was headlined by what you see on the bottom of the screen here, The Rock slapping Cody Rhodes and setting in motion the official plans for the main events of WrestleMania 40. We're going to talk about the other stuff later. Bianca Belair had some things to say. We'll talk about potential opponents for her this year at WrestleMania. Also, the Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley face-off, which I think made it very clear the direction they're heading in with those two for WrestleMania 40. But we are going to start with a slap heard around the world. The Rock slapping the taste out of Cody Rhodes' mouth on stage in Las Vegas after a wild sequence of events that, in all honesty, let's call it what it is, that all started at the Royal Rumble when Cody Rhodes won back-to-back Royal Rumbles, becoming the fourth person to ever do that. He pointed at Roman Reigns. The follow-up on SmackDown where Cody comes out, says everything he said, and then says he's not going to take everything from Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, which led to Cody stepping aside, handing his spot to essentially The Rock to come in. And then from there, let's call it what it is. I think it was an obvious pivot out of what they decided to do after the fan reaction to The Rock, all the boos, the We Want Cody stuff, everything. So they clearly made some changes. And I find it almost impossible to believe that they didn't based on the reaction. Now, here's what I will say. It's good. It's fantastic that they decided to make these changes. And even if there are still holes in the story a bit, which I think you can absolutely say, based on where they got to, which we're going to talk about, at least they made it entertaining. At least they made it somewhat intriguing to try to figure out exactly where this thing is going to head next. And yes, at least it gave us heel Rock. So, from that standpoint, I will start with this. No matter what the initial decision was, to have, The Rock basically change course, if you want to believe that's the direction they went, after the boos, after everything else that came along with it, to that I say bravo to The Rock. Because you're talking about, a box office attraction here, the likes of which, wrestling has not seen before with The Rock, coming in, getting cheered in his first couple appearances back here recently. And then the one most recently, he gets booed, and we're getting Rocky sucks chants. We're getting it on shows he's not even on. He could have easily just kind of said, hey, we're going to power through this. I don't care what these people think. We're just going to keep this thing going. But I think it is clear at this point that they made some changes. They decided that let's lean into this instead of just letting this thing lead into a Rock versus Roman Reigns situation in Philadelphia at WrestleMania 40 that's going to get them booed out of the stadium. It's going to just completely, take over everything. And so I think they decided to lean into it. Now, I know there are still people out there who think this was the plan from the start. I just am not buying it because of that not at WrestleMania line that Cody said on SmackDown. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, there is one theory out there that says, okay, well, maybe The Rock misled Cody, right? Like maybe The Rock and Cody had talked. Rock gave him advice. Ultimately, it was the wrong advice. Cody realized it once The Rock started turning on his fans on the Pat McAfee show, doing the Cody Crybabies thing. And then as things started to escalate on the stage with everyone out there, maybe Cody finally realized, hey, enough of this, like he said, enough of this BS. And he comes out and chooses Roman Reigns to take that spot from The Rock, who, we saw Roman Reigns choosing The Rock, which Cody's like, you knew when Roman Reigns chose The Rock, you knew that's when they had you. Like, okay, we're getting Cody Rhodes here versus Roman Reigns because otherwise we know Roman can't pick his opponent. That's not how this thing works. So, I mean, this whole thing again, you're just trying to do circles on like the plot point and everything that kind of led to this. But ultimately, I think this was probably one of the best options they had available was to just lean into the booze, lean into the disdain for The Rock even thinking about taking Cody Rhodes' spot at WrestleMania to finish the story, and going all in on that, because they've gone all in on this. Unless you want to go with one of the other theories. And here's what you're going to realize as we talk through this: there are so many different theories you could come up with to try to figure out exactly how they're going to go about this. And that is, again, a good thing, because even if it's not been perfect to this point, they at least have our attention. They at least have questions. They have open loops that they have to somehow close here along the way. And I'm curious. So that's a good thing. But you have them going all in on the fact that you've now got essentially this alliance between The Rock and Roman Reigns, the Bloodline. Not in the way we thought. We thought The Rock was coming for the head of the table, all this other stuff, which again goes back to when The Rock made his return. Why say all that if this is the direction you're going? But we move beyond that because the plan has clearly changed. And so you get the setup here with The Rock slapping Cody after Cody talking about his family, all of this other stuff. He's not just talking about Roman Reigns' family, he's talking about The Rock's family too. And you get the big visual up there of the Bloodline tree, which I thought was a great touch just to see that on the screen and really push, the importance of that to both Roman Reigns and The Rock. And of course, that led to the situation where The Rock winds up slapping Cody, and you get that visual of Cody just completely pissed off. You get Seth Rollins stepping up for Cody, which is not something you would have expected here. And so if you just take it based on what we saw after all of that unfolded, right? If you take everything we saw at this press conference and you try to put it all together, there are quite a few directions I think you can go in here now. And so if we start to make predictions for Cody versus the Bloodline here, there are a lot of ways you can go. Is it going to be as simple as Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 in the main event? I'm still not completely sold on that because of why. It was what happened after what happened on the stage that I think is just as important here, and we have to keep that in mind. It's what The Rock said to Triple H when Triple H was doing his interview that I think makes this thing very important here. Because The Rock told Triple H that he better fix it. And when you think about it, they're clearly playing into the power dynamic now of The Rock has joined the TKO board. He's got all this power now as, a member of the board. They brought him in, all this other stuff. Triple H essentially, finds himself in a position where he's without the McMahon backing, which again, that's a completely other story at this point. But, he's all alone essentially. Like Triple H is not surrounded by the people who have been in charge of this company forever and all this other stuff who could make those kind of decisions now. He's surrounded by The Rock's people. And if you look at it from that standpoint, you've got a potential power struggle between Triple H and The Rock. So why would it not be as easy as the match they announced, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, as the main event for WrestleMania 40? Well, you could have The Rock continue to apply that pressure to Triple H and essentially put his job here on the line unless he does what? Unless he fixes it. And for Triple H to fix it, that means there's going to need to be some shuffling. It's not going to be as easy maybe as Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. So I think that's one option we have to consider. Maybe Triple H shuffles some things around. We still get to Cody versus Reigns, but maybe there's an additional aspect to that. Maybe The Rock and Roman Reigns get their main event, right? Maybe they get their own one-on-one main event, which at this point, I don't know, makes a lot of sense if these two are aligned together, right? And maybe you get Cody versus Rollins, where you kind of get Triple H putting everybody in a position where there's something they can get out of it. Rock and Reigns can get their main event. And maybe it's a matter of where Cody faces Seth. Seth gets a chance to get his win over Cody. Cody gets a chance to be able to go to the next night to face Reigns or Rock or whoever. That one seems a little more convoluted to me now, based on the fact that they're really leaning into this heel stuff with Rock and Reigns. And so if you're doing it that way, then I think it's fair to question, okay, you're doing Cody versus Reigns. If that is your set main event, and Rock keeps bringing up the long game, right? He keeps bringing up the long game, all this other stuff. Is this entire thing a ruse? Has The Rock and Cody Rhodes, have they been playing us the entire time here? Have they been playing Roman Reigns the entire time here? And maybe that's the long game that The Rock is talking about. That's one option, is that perhaps The Rock and Cody Rhodes have been working together maybe not the entire time, but somehow along the way, they're working together and they're basically setting up Roman Reigns to let his guard down, think he's safe. And just when he thinks he's safe, boom, The Rock turns on Roman. Cody wins. Problem solved, right? Although I think Cody winning by interference from The Rock or something like that, I wouldn't love that as much. I think Cody just needs to win the match straight up. He just needs to find a way because that's what you usually get, right? If you get the babyface triumph, it's outside interference. I'm not exactly always a fan of that. It may work in this case, but I think you want Cody just straight up beating Roman Reigns. And how they get there and maybe how that happens, I don't know, but I think that's probably the better scenario than having The Rock be the reason that Cody wins. But if you do go that direction, what does that give you? Well, it gives you then the Rock versus Roman Reigns match that we thought we were getting this year, most likely at next year's WrestleMania. Or I guess theoretically you could do it at SummerSlam. But I don't know. But that's one place, like right, that's one avenue you can go here if you want to go that path of Cody and The Rock are working together and somehow they're going to pull one over on Roman Reigns, and that's going to lead to the downfall, of Reigns and the Bloodline here. That's one option. The other option is also very simple. You do Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns for the championship on night 2. Maybe somewhere in there, there's a possibility you do Roman Reigns and The Rock in a tag team match against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, which again is something just unlikely. We never would have thought of. Maybe that's your night 1 thing, or maybe you do it somewhere else, or there's always that possibility. Although I think the issue I would have with that is, it does give The Rock his main event, right? If you read the reports and all that, Rock needs to have his main event. That's part of the deal. But I don't know necessarily about that. If you do the tag team match on night 1 and then you do this on night 2, because that does remove one of those main event slots, whether that's Becky and Rhea Ripley or Seth Rollins and whoever. Maybe it's Drew McIntyre, maybe it's not. So I'm not sure exactly if that's the route they're going to go, the tag team match. But maybe The Rock on night 2, however they get there, costs Cody Rhodes the win against Roman Reigns. And then the heel heat becomes even higher. The story's not finished. Now it's not going to get finished for a second straight year. And then what do you do after that? Well, you could do Cody Rhodes versus The Rock. You could do that at SummerSlam, perhaps. Then you could lead to next year's WrestleMania. I know we're going another full year here, but maybe Cody finishes the story in year 3. I think there's risk involved in that, but I will say from a business perspective, if I'm looking at this with how TKO would look at this in WWE, if you think you have The Rock for multiple matches, you're going to take advantage of that. Then you got to find multiple matches for The Rock, right? Which you can still do Rock versus Roman in one of those matches. You can still theoretically do that, but there are other ways too, right? Again, maybe it's a tag team match or whatever, but I think we know we're going to get The Rock versus Roman Reigns sometime, someplace, somewhere. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's at SummerSlam. We don't know. But if we go in knowing that, then you just got to figure out how you work all the pieces around it. And maybe, it is just a matter of maybe Roman turns on The Rock. Like maybe there's a lot of ways you could do this. Although I think right now, if Roman turned on The Rock, he may get cheers. So I guess the best way to put this is there's a lot of ways they can go with this. There are a lot of potential directions. I think that there's intrigue in both of those scenarios, whether it is The Rock costing Cody Rhodes to finish the story for a second straight year, building to the Cody versus Rock match. You're putting a lot of risk in the fact that, again, The Rock is not 30 anymore. Like he could certainly, we've seen him get injured before, and that was a decade ago in a wrestling ring. What's it going to be like for an actual match this year? Too, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors you can use to get around that, but that is definitely something that would come up. Is that you're putting a lot into the story, and if you're putting it into the story knowing that you're trying to get multiple matches out of The Rock over the next 6 months or year, there's a lot of risk involved there. But you got to take chances, and it's The Rock. We can say what we want, and whether he's getting cheered or getting booed, like he's still a must-see attraction for a lot of people, especially for a large part of the WWE audience. So that's something else there when you look at it. So I guess my whole question in this thing, and what I keep going back to is it going to be this easy now? Are we really getting Cody versus Reigns as the main event? Because they didn't leave it official after the kickoff thing, right? You didn't hear just, I mean, we saw the graphic, we saw all the other stuff, but I do think we're heading towards this power struggle option where it's going to be Triple H, aligned with Cody. It's going to be The Rock aligned with Roman Reigns, the back and forth, because there was a report out there not long ago that WWE was going to lean into a lot more realism type stuff, right? They're already doing like the sports based presentation where you're getting the arena walk ins for all the superstars and everyone else. So, like, you're getting kind of like they do, for the NBA. If you watch that, like, you get the players walking into the arena, same thing with the NFL, all that stuff. So, I think there's an aspect that they would like to play up with the whole power struggle between The Rock and Triple H. And I do think that's going to play into the story. And we'll see, again, exactly how far that goes, the power struggle aspect of this, because you could see Triple H being pressured into preventing Cody from getting that spot, maybe where The Rock still wiggles his way into the main event, and then it goes back to Rock versus Reigns. And, you just keep pulling things away from Cody here. If they want to make him the new Daniel Bryan, I mean, I guess that's one way to do it, right? That was part of the report, too, is that they wanted Cody to, somehow maybe be like the next Daniel Bryan, although this scenario is a bit different in terms of how they've done it. So, I mean, there are a lot of different ways you could go with this. I think that this could have been made a lot easier than they made it. I think that's very obvious. But it does, at least for me, add a lot of intrigue here as to which direction they're going to go. And I'm sold. Like, it was entertaining, and I don't. The thing is, like, and we can laugh about it, but heel Rock is way more entertaining than I think anything else they could have done with the Rock. Just the basic Rock, is he coming for the head of the table against Roman Reigns? Adding the heel aspect of it with the Rock, whether it's for real or whether it's, again, just a whole ruse and they're gonna pull one over on us, the baby faces pull one over on the heel, which is not usually the dynamic that you use, but I still find it a lot more. There are a lot more good possibilities, in my opinion, than if it just would have been the basic, hey, here's The Rock returning for his first match in forever. You're supposed to cheer him, so cheer him. When instead, let's just get the heel Rock. Let's get the Hollywood Rock. Like, let's get aspects of those different characters and do it that way. So, I'm just going to run through some other ones I'm seeing here. I see a list. Like, I put together a list of like all these different things, and I'm like, okay, are they going to do any of this? I don't think they're doing Rock versus Rollins. Someone suggested that. I don't see that as an option at all. If anything, if the Rock and Rollins are interacting, it's in a tag team match. They're not going to do that separate. I'd be stunned if that is the case. There's still more that Cody can add here, where they can still go a lot of different directions as to why Cody said what he said on SmackDown, and then ultimately said, I'm going to choose Reigns. And maybe it was as simple as The Rock, smack talking the family and all this other stuff and talking about royal family and all this. But something else that was pointed out, I don't think they're doing the triple threat either. I just want to say that. I also think the triple threat is a tricky move to do with Cody versus Rock versus Reigns, although that is one that I think is probably on the table. Maybe just get The Rock inserting himself into it, right? Again, the power struggle aspect of it. And then it's kind of like a handicap match where it's The Rock and Reigns versus Cody. Cody overcomes both of them. If you do it that way, well, hey, that makes Cody look good if he's able to beat both The Rock and Roman Reigns in the same match. But, even with the backpedaling that they've done here, seemingly, I do think there's something else we have to look at on the other side of this. And for all the good we could say they've done to maybe try to course correct here, you could also play devil's advocate and go and say, well, what did they do in the process? Did they harm everyone involved? Meaning the crowd is booing The Rock now. The crowd, is booing Roman Reigns, which they've done. You have portions of the crowd that are booing Cody now because they're Rock fans. Was that really the best idea? And I don't know that that was the intention, was to have the crowd booing everyone in some way, shape, or form. And you also had the biggest match that everyone thought would be the biggest match for years, The Rock versus Roman Reigns. A large, decent percentage of the audience doesn't want to see that. And that was your money match, right? That was the money match that everybody had been leaning on for the past however many years now, is that they're going to do it eventually. They're going to do it. And man, it's going to be the biggest thing ever. Everybody's going to want it. And now it's like, man, you've split the audience to where half of them just don't even care. Like, they don't want that match. But then you've also, again, you've got people who don't want Cody versus Roman either now because they want to see The Rock. And so it's, I mean, they put themselves in a bit of a corner with this whole situation. But I will still give the same answer I gave earlier, in that I think they worked their way out of it well enough to at least make you tune in moving forward to see how they pull this off. And look, Cody's a big part of this. Roman's a big part of this. Rollins, we'll see what Rollins gets out of this. I'm not sure. Maybe what the direction is for Rollins just yet. Maybe part of that's dependent on his injury. But I I think you got to give a lot of the credit here to The Rock, because as I said earlier, he could have easily just looked at this and said, nope, we're pushing forward. I'm The Rock. They can boo if they want. We're going to make a lot of money, which they're going to make a lot of money anyways. But seemingly, if it's a pivot, he has leaned into the heel aspect. He's playing that character that he has no issue playing. It's just natural, I think, just the charisma, everything that made The Rock The Rock. He's using all that. And, I think just that is something where you're getting all of that put into this entire build. And in the process, if Rock's leaning into that, if he's willing to go along with this, and let's say he's going to keep playing the heel role and he's not in cahoots with Cody, and we're going to, everybody's going to realize that they were on the same page come April. Good, because I say good for that, because that gives you a lot more long-term possibilities to where you could do this for another year. I'm not saying you do the Cody story for another year, but I mean, maybe they do, but you can do so many other things too if you have heel Rock involved. Like if you have this corporate Rock, right? Like think about all the combination of characters he's played as a heel. You combine all those together into this super Rock here, where he's just going about, using his pull on the TKO board and all this other stuff just to really screw with everything that Triple H wants to do and all those things. Because there's another rivalry, right? The long-standing rivalry between The Rock and Triple H. Now it continues behind the screens. And so, yeah, like I think that this is what makes this thing moving forward. It's the dynamic of The Rock and how they use him. And if they are going to just be completely fine with leaning into this, knowing that this man is going to get booed by a good chunk of the crowd, if they're okay with that, if The Rock's okay with that, my phrase is that's what's best for business. And so you can tie it all in however you want. But it does, I think, add a lot more possibilities with what they can do with this story, whether it was the plan from the start, which I just do not think was the case, or whether it was a pivot, getting the heel Rock out of this and putting Cody in a position to finish the story while still now having that doubt that could The Rock really be the person that is the one who holds Cody back from finishing the story yet again. Because I said this to someone yesterday. I'm like, if you want to see real heat, if The Rock causes Cody Rhodes to lose to Roman Reigns in Philadelphia at WrestleMania 40, you're going to get some real heat, the likes of which that I don't know if The Rock wants that kind of heat. So he may be leaning into it now, but I think that night, WrestleMania 40, if The Rock's the reason Cody doesn't finish the story, you're going to have like old school territory days heat, perhaps, from some people. So that's just something to consider, and whether that is actually the direction they're going to go. So we'll find out. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of things they've opened up with this. I'm still stuck on the not at WrestleMania line from Cody, but we've moved past that now. And Cody, for right now, has his match. It's going to be Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns in the main event, night 2, WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia. Will that change? Who else is going to get involved? Will we get The Rock in multiple matches, a tag match leading up to WrestleMania 40? Does he still have a match at WrestleMania 40, which I think is a guarantee at this point based on all the reports? He's going to fight somebody, whether that's the triple threat, whether it's a tag team match, whether he ends up fighting Roman Reigns somehow, some way. We're asking questions, and I think that's what WWE wanted. They wanted more questions coming out of this than answers, and they got it, which means you got to tune into the weekly TV to see how they're going to solve this puzzle. So there you go. What a wild sequence that was with The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, and Seth Rollins, who does feel like kind of the odd man out here. But I think him stepping up for Cody at least gives you the thought that could they really do a tag team match between those four, the Bloodline versus Cody and Seth? Maybe they do it. But let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. There are so many different theories out there on the internet, which is fun to read everybody and see what they think. And my guess is probably one that we're not even discussing that winds up being the winner. But they've opened up a lot of questions. Been a little bit of an interesting road to get to this point, but I will give them credit for making the most of it and giving what I think was probably one of the best outcomes they could give us, with Heel Rock being the talk of this entire thing and whether he's going to be the one that holds Cody back from finishing his story. So there you go. There's some thoughts on The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins. We'll have more certainly coming soon here on Wrestling Reaction with thoughts on those. Let's quickly run through everything else that happened on the WrestleMania kickoff event. Bianca Belair came out first. And, Bianca just sort of cut your typical babyface promo talking about how she's made history at WrestleMania. She did bring up Sasha Banks. Don't get too excited. I don't think Sasha Banks is coming back to WWE based on AEW announcing the big business edition of Dynamite earlier this week in Boston, coming up in March, which, of course, is going to most likely be the landing point and the debut for Mercedes Moné in AEW. But Bianca was more so talking about the history she'd made, the championships that she had been a part of, winning championships, being a part of those matches at the past several WrestleManias. But now this year, is she going to get that same opportunity? She's going to, be in a chamber qualifying match, which, let's call it what it is. She's going to beat Michin and go on, likely to be part of that chamber match for a shot, at WrestleMania. But I don't think that's what we're going to see from Bianca, which, of course, leads to the question, what is next for Bianca? Who is she going to face at WrestleMania 40? The way she talked it up in this press conference, the wording that she used, to me, it really made me think that they're going to do Bianca versus Jade Cargill. And I know it's like, well, you could hold off on this, you could do it next year, all of this, but I'm not sure. The way that promo came across to me, that sounded like Bianca wanting to make history again. And if she's going to do that, there are ways to do it with Jade. And again, just sort of the first time ever aspect of that match, and everything with it, I think would just be a no-brainer based on the reaction they got at the Rumble. And I don't think they would have set up that spot in the Rumble if they didn't already know that that was the reaction they would get. And, it's kind of like the old Hogan Warrior spot, right? Like back in the days, you put those guys in the Rumble, you get the reaction, you know where you're headed. And that reaction's coming. You're going to get something out of the fans when you put those two in there. So my guess is with Bianca, I just, I don't think we're getting Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. I know they were both on the WrestleMania 40 kickoff poster or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to have, somehow Bianca loses in the chamber. Becky emerges victorious, which we'll get to in a second. And Bianca's left to figure out her path. Maybe that's where Jade steps up to her. That's my guess. Jade steps up, brings up, what we saw in the Rumble between the two, and they decide, all right, let's see who the best, woman is. And they have, just your one-on-one basic match. And that's obviously something you can do again in the future. You can come out of that with a lot of different directions. So I think for me, Bianca probably setting up for a match with Jade Cargill, because the reason why is like, who else would it be? I mean, I guess theoretically you could do like a Tiffany Stratton. She's on SmackDown now. If you want to give her kind of that, first big spotlight match or something, I suppose you could do it that way. But really just, looking down the rest of the roster here, I'm just not sure, because, they've also been playing up to Jade. Who's she going to sign with? All this other stuff, free agency and everything. And I think that's the way they get there after Elimination Chamber, is just to, maybe just, again, as easily as just having Jade step up to Bianca, and that's your match at WrestleMania 40. I think that's your best bet at this point, unless they just do something out of nowhere, and do it another way. But that's my guess for Bianca Belair, which, of course, is going to lead us into the showdown between Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley. We had that face-off here at the WrestleMania 40 kickoff event. And let me tell you, anytime you see WWE, presentation-wise, take two people You got one on each side. So you got one here, you got one here. Anytime you see the camera zoom in on two people and their faces are just right here against each other, that tells you all you need to know. You're getting that match. And so they would not have done that here at this event if that was not the intended direction for WrestleMania 40, which again means that Becky is likely going to be the winner of the women's elimination chamber match. Like I said, I'd just be stunned if it's any other combination, unless Bianca does win it and somehow they tie that into whatever they want to do moving forward. But I think the way they set this up here just sort of gave you the little nod, like you're getting Becky versus Rhea at WrestleMania. And they wanted to make that very clear at this event, knowing how many eyeballs were on it, press, all that kind of stuff. So I thought they did a good job setting it up. You had these two again, sort of had the face off, Becky interrupting Rhea. And yeah, I really feel like this is a match we know we've been heading towards for months and months now. I mean, this just seemed like the most logical destination to get there. Of course, Rhea is going to face Nia Jax at Elimination Chamber. But no matter what happens there, like I think it's pretty clear you're getting to Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch. It's sort of that feel of a first time big match. That's what you want on the WrestleMania stage. And that's why I said I think Bianca versus Jade, Becky versus Rhea, if those are the two headlining, kind of matches from the women's standpoint, not even like, and think about that. That's not even adding in the Bayley versus Io Sky one, which has had way more of the story aspect added to it. And you could even see, CM Punk was bringing him up, other people bringing up. Like, if you just want to go by story, Triple H has made comments in the past, right, about how stories can play into the choice for the main event. Like Bayley versus Io, the story wise, that's been a long running story. You can certainly pick apart things along the way and wonder if they did as good of a job as maybe they could have done with all the different, angles and stuff to get there. But those are three big time women's matches. If you have those three on the card, if you have Bianca versus Jade, Becky versus Rhea, Bayley versus Io Sky, yeah, like I think that's that would be huge. And so that's a loaded lineup of matches. So now again, you could also wonder, well, if that is the lineup, could you save Bianca and Jade for next year's WrestleMania, maybe, or do that at SummerSlam or whatever you want to do? Maybe you don't need it on a card like this, but if you want to make this one of the more stacked cards we've seen, if you've got those four we mentioned earlier, The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody, Seth Rollins, and some, combination, Drew McIntyre's added to the mix, Sami Zayn's added to the mix, all those different things, right? And you've got these three women's matches. Like if you get to Becky versus Rhea, I mean, that'd be a tremendous card. And you are filling two nights. So keep that in mind. It's not like the old days, right? We're just finding spots for one night. Like you're filling two different nights. And if you want both of them to be just stacked, I could see those three being, kind of your big matches, because it does feel like two of them are locks. Like I said, the other one is just trying to figure out if we're going to get that Bianca Jade match this year. But Becky versus Rhea, the face off between those two, I think gave you all you needed to know. We're getting here, folks. It's kind of the wink, wink. We're giving you this match. We just got to let Becky earn it first. We got to let Rhea handle her business with Nia Jax, and we're going to get there with these two because they gave you that visual of these two on the stage together, face to face. The titles there. Adam Pearce kind of getting between them. So, yeah, I think that was a clear setup for where they're headed with that particular match at WrestleMania 40. So there you go, guys. There were some thoughts on the WrestleMania 40 kickoff events. Not a lot else to add. They did announce the WWE Speed thing coming to X/Twitter. The 5 minutes, I don't know how exactly it's going to work, but I'm curious to see what they do with that and see exactly, again, what that looks like. It's an interesting idea to at least, throw it out there on Twitter/X, see what happens. These very, bite-sized type matches you can put in. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. But more curious to see what they're going to do with this whole situation involving the top stars and the WrestleMania 40 main events, which is still, I don't think, made completely official just yet. The panel of Michael Cole, CM Punk, Big E, and Pat McAfee, they were talking as though this thing was not completely official. I thought CM Punk and Big E did a really good job kind of bringing up different counterpoints to possible scenarios. Punk's talking about how Cody should just punch The Rock and all this other stuff. Punching an executive, that was quite a line, I thought there. Just, stuff like that. But look, it ties into Cody's story. for everyone who, someone brought it up. I think it was John Pollock on Post Wrestling, or maybe it was Wei Ting, but there was a great line I thought that made a lot of sense in that if you go back to AEW, you think about how Arn Anderson was always talking about how Cody needed to kind of get that vicious side, right? He needed to kind of step up and stand up for himself and those kind of things. Well, he did stand up for himself here against The Rock. Will that lead to bigger and better things for Cody Rhodes to allow him to finish the story, or will it be The Rock who is the one that decides that he doesn't want Cody to finish the story, and we get the heel bloodline continue to doing their thing against the power of Triple H and all this other stuff. So we will find out. But again, guys, I appreciate you watching and or listening here on Wrestling Reaction. Hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. New channel. I'm just having a lot of fun talking wrestling here. So we appreciate you watching as always. And we'll have more coverage, obviously, on the road to WrestleMania 40. A lot more thoughts. SmackDown coming up on Friday. We'll share some thoughts on that, on the biggest stories coming out of that one as well. So again, I appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Wrestling Reaction.